Hello, everyone. I'm excited today to come to you with some really wonderful tips for living better using Ayurveda. So, many of you know that I'm an Ayurvedic health coach, and that is one of my primary tools that I use to help people. And so, today, one of the things I'm going to be talking about is what Ayurveda teaches us about living. I'm going to give you a big picture, and then we're going to focus in on the summer. So, welcome everyone if you're joining us now. Today is June 27th. We are right in the middle, or kind of right at the beginning of summer. For some of you, it's winter, right? If you're in the southern hemisphere, it's winter right now. If you're in the northern hemisphere, you're in summer. For some people, depending on where even in the northern hemisphere you live, it's kind of going back and forth, or you're just starting to get into summer. So it really, really depends on where you're living, and it just depends on the year, doesn't it? Where I am in Central Oregon, we've been getting a lot of rain, a lot of back and forth for this year, which is not quite as normal. Usually, we're in high desert, so it's very dry here. So everything affects you. Okay, so remember I said I'm gonna give you a big picture first. So I'm gonna zoom out and talk a little bit about the perspective of Ayurveda and how we describe the world. So in terms of anything, we talk about the five elements. And the five elements are air, ether, which is space, fire, water, and earth, right? So with these five elements, we can describe anything. We can talk about a season. We can talk about an irritation. We can talk about a food, right? All things have qualities, and we know this. But in Ayurveda, we talk about how all of these qualities are really coming from these five elements, right? And combinations of these five elements. And in a certain way, all things have a little bit of all of these five elements because they exist, right? And all of existence is made up of these five elements, but there's a concentration in different ones. For instance, when we talk about food, one of the things we're going to talk about is sweet food. So sweet food is generally very earthy and watery, right? We'll go more into that as we go about it. But so that's the zooming out, like the big picture, that we can look at things based on those five elements and talk about them, and that can help us describe them, right? And then when we talk about what's going on with you, with me, with us individually, we can use the elements to describe that as well. So if, for instance, you have like here we are again, it's summer, so let's just say, what if you've been out all day in the heat and the sun, and you're feeling overheated. So then, therefore, you wouldn't want to add some kind of food that would be more heating because you're already overheated. Does that make sense? Instead, you'd want to do things that are cooling. So do you see how, in a way, this is so practical that it's kind of like common sense? But on another level, sometimes it's not, because you might think that having a margarita, for instance, and some chips and salsa on a hot summer day would be a wonderful thing. And certainly they're delicious, right? But if we are having these things and we're already overheated, if it's a day, that's like really intense and you've been working outside all day already, you haven't been drinking enough water, then to have chips and salsa and a margarita would be like the worst thing you could do. One of the worst things you could do, because alcohol is heating, because salsa is heating, because chips are drying. So if you're dehydrated, then, so this is what's so wonderful. One of the things that's so wonderful about Ayurveda is it kind of breaks it down into these different ways of talking about things that makes it really simple and complex at the same time, right? So it's easy to describe things, and it's easy to see how one of the principles of Ayurveda is that like increases like, right? So if you're hot and you do something that's heating, you're going to go further out of balance in that direction of the heating direction, right? Okay, so, and then the way we balance things is with opposites. And that's kind of self-explanatory too. That's kind of common sense, right? If you're hot, you want to do something to cool yourself off, right? Okay, so that's big picture. We've zoomed out a little bit. We're going to stay zoomed out a little bit, and we're going to talk about how seasonal living is such an important tool when it comes to health, because we are so separate from the elements in a way. We're not at our nature. At our core, we are nature. We are the five elements. We see them and feel them and taste them and experience them every day. However, because of the ways that we live our modern lives, we are detached from them in a big, big way. So we live in houses, we live in boxes that shelter us. Oftentimes our boxes have temperature regulators, right? We have a heater. Sometimes some people have air conditioners. We have all of these ways that we separate ourselves from the elements in a way that's protective. So it's not a terrible thing, but it is also, if we allow it, if we don't keep reaching out to connect with nature and to connect with the rhythm of what's going on in the world in that way, then we can become very disconnected and in that way very out of balance. And so Ayurveda teaches us about living seasonally. And that means that there's going to be different things indicated, different ways of living, eating, treating our bodies, minds, experiences, depending on the season that we're in, right? So fall is a completely different story, isn't it? Fall is the exact opposite in a way. Fall is very drying. Fall is very windy and airy and not hot. It's cool. We're starting to really get cool in that season. And so we're needing kind of the opposite qualities in some ways. So we're not going to go into detail with all of the seasons, but we're just going to talk about the big picture and then summer, because that's where we are right now. So the reason we want to line up with the seasons is because different elements govern, or are more exacerbated or more, we have more of certain elements in certain seasons, right? And so therefore we have a tendency to go out of balance in that particular way. And so living in a way that is more balancing is going to be helpful. All right. So I think we're done with the zooming out. Now for the zooming in. So as we're moving into summer, we're going to need to incorporate a different kind of foods that, and it's exciting, right? Because it's cool that when we're in one season, more things are available to us that are native, if you will, to that particular season, right? Like strawberries, blueberries, these wonderful things that we can't possibly have in season in winter, and that's why they're good for us at that time, right? As things naturally grow and show up in nature, that's when they're the best for us to eat. That's our bodies literally change. It's incredibly cool how our bodies change the enzymes that we make throughout the year so that we can digest certain things better in certain seasons, right? So in autumn, for instance, as we're going into autumn and then winter, it's easier for us to digest nuts and things that are growing then, like as we're coming into that period, right? Like as we move into deeper autumn, like in the very beginning, that's harvest season. But as we move deeper into autumn towards the colder, darker months, we don't have as many fresh things to eat. So it becomes necessary for us to eat more root vegetables, meats, and seeds and grains and nuts and things like that. And so our bodies naturally produce the enzymes that help us digest those better. Isn't that cool? And then as we're moving into like the beginning of spring, that's when the best time would be for other things. Okay? So here we are with summer. So summer, when we talk about the elements, summer is really a lot of fire and water. And this also depends on where you are geographically and also just what happens to be happening, right? So like I said, we're getting more rain here than we typically would in the late spring and in early summer. And so we have more moisture than we normally do. But if you live in a super dry climate, it's not the case that you have all of this moisture, all of this wet in the summer. So that'll be another factor. So in general, summer, let's just talk about the fire piece of it. There's a lot of fire. The sun is more intense and we have it for a longer period. So right now, the days are getting longer. Or actually, no, they're getting shorter because we just had this summer solstice. But they're getting shorter, but they're at their peak. Like this is, let's say noon is when the sun is at its hottest, but it's really 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. that we have that most fiery period. So the summer months, even though June 21st is the solstice, like the time before and after that is the most potent, fiery. And so we want to look at ways to balance that so that we don't get overheated. And so one of the ways is by eating sweet things. So that's nice, right? Sweet foods are some of my favorites and most people's favorites. And so when we say sweet, we definitely don't mean sugar or any kind of refined sugars, or sugar at all. We're not talking about sugar. We're talking about sweet foods that are naturally sweet. So juicy fruits are delicious and in season, and this is the time that you want to be having more of those. Notice that those fruits also have more water, so that's good for the drying sun. It also, like sweet things, combat spicy and hot things. So if you've ever been to Thailand, or a Thai restaurant, a normal thing that will be in the little caddies, you'll have your chili sauce. You might have some fish sauce with spicy peppers in it, and then there'll be a little dish with sugar for sprinkling on if you make it too hot, right? Because the sweet literally does counter the spicy in a big way. So having those kinds of things, sweet things, having cooling things, like many cooling things there's lots of cooling herbs and things. Like Cilantro is very cooling. Mint is very cooling. Fennel is very, very cooling. And that could be the fennel seeds, or it could also be in your grocery store. Hopefully you can find right now the whole fennel bulb, like the whole plant basically. And you slice the bulb up, and you could cook it if you wanted, but it's also makes a delicious salad or an addition to a salad, and it's super cooling and good for you. It also carries a lot of water because it's a stalk, right? It's the bulb piece, but it's like it has a lot of water in it, so that's good for you. Other sweet things are grains. Grains are actually sweet. Rice is sweet. Wheat is sweet. So, and always having things closer to their natural form is going to be better. So having the whole grain versus bread. Although bread is not a terrible thing to be having either during this time. Coconut is sweet. Root vegetables are sweet. Dairy is sweet. Ghee is something that's super, super good for us. Dairy in moderation, like whole milk, making a lassi, which is kind of a watered down yogurt, can be cooling, especially if you add some nice things like mint or rose petals. Rose is another thing that's very cooling. One of the things I like to do is keep rose hydrosol with me, or some kind of hydrosol. Lavender is cooling, and spray it on my face to stay hydrated, but also because the rose is calming and cooling, and also just very yummy and sweet. So that's a good thing to do. Bitter foods are also good for right now. Leafy greens, bitter fruits, green vegetables, fresh herbs like cilantro. Tea, bitter teas would be black tea, chicory tea, mint, dandelion. Astringent foods are very good for us right now. Beans, lentils, fruits. Fruits like certain fruits are more astringent. So like if you eat a banana that's not quite ripe, that's going to be more astringent. Apples, things with fruit with peeling on it. The peeling has a more astringent quality to it. Pomegranate is another one. Raw vegetables, parsley is astringent. And then some things that you want to keep in mind is, in general, lighter things can be nice, like some of the lighter oils. Sunflower oil is great for your skin too during this time of year. Coconut oil, avocado oil, olive oil is good. Ghee is great, which is clarified butter. Ghee is great for all constitutions. It's really great for all constitutions and all times of the year, but ghee is really delicious. I love it, and it's also indicated for summer. So sweet, bitter, and astringent foods are good. And one of the things that's cool about knowing that is that the flavor, the taste of astringent and bitter and sweet actually have different effects in your body. Just the flavor itself. So astringent things are more toning, and bitter things are more toning in your body, which is really cool, like for your organs and your digestive system. Some of the ways that in the summer, when we do get out of balance in that way, when we have too much pitta, some of the ways that can show up is in the form of skin irritations, rashes, acne, anger, sarcasm, finding yourself being more critically minded or judgmental of yourself or other people. Of yourself, that would be more like a perfectionist tendency. Of other people, it might kind of come out as sarcasm or just feeling really frustrated. Heartburn, indigestion, diarrhea. These are all symptoms of having a pitta imbalance, having too much fire going on. And so if you're noticing those things, that you really want to pay attention to them and start doing a few things to cool that down. Other things we can do are like yoga, like really relaxing yoga, restorative yoga, taking a walk in the shade, being in nature, things that bring you back to that place. So obviously you wouldn't want to go take a walk in the heat of the sun if you didn't have shade, or if it was very, very hot. You could do other things that either, if you can't be outside, if it's too hot outside, then you might not want to go outside to, if you're already overheated, if that makes sense. It is really good for us to be in the sun. It's very good for us to have exposure to the sun between, like when it's at its highest. So between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. But we want to be really smart about it, because we also know that the sun can be very damaging. And so it's important that you take into account your constitution, your skin type. I'm a very fair skin type. I freckle and I burn easily. Eventually, at some point, I start to get a little bit of a glow. I'm starting to get a little bit of sun at this point. But I burn very easily, and some people don't. And whatever you are, you want to pay attention that you're not going past what your tolerance is of the sun. So for some people, that might be 10 minutes between 10 and 2 to start with. And then you might gradually increase that time, and maybe then by the end of the week it's 30. Right? So you stretch it out just a little bit, but you definitely don't want to just get out there and, be out there for an hour and get burnt first thing of the season. So instead you want to work in increments, and you actually do build up a little bit of a tolerance as you do that. And if you find yourself in a situation where you're working outside, or you are just planning a day to be outside and it's a really hot summer day where you're out in the sun a lot, then you want to do things that protect you, like wearing a sun shirt, wearing a sun hat, covering your body. We have so many great resources where you can get clothing that blocks the sun. And so you want that little window. You do want that time where you can get some sun and therefore some vitamin D, but not so much that it's going to put you over the edge. So sun shirts, and now I'm going to say sunscreen if you have to be outside. And what you want to look for in a sunscreen is that it doesn't have any chemical sunscreens, because the chemical sunscreens are the ones that are debatably more toxic to you than the sun. So things like you're looking for the ones that have zinc oxide, and you want it to be non-nano-sized particles, because when something is nano-sized, those nanoparticles can get inside your bloodstream and pass through the blood-brain barrier, and that becomes toxic and dangerous. So you definitely want to keep an eye out for something that says non-nano particles. If you live near a Whole Foods, they have actually like the best deal that I've found on sunscreen, and there's nothing bad in it whatsoever. It's just zinc oxide, non-nano zinc oxide, and good oils. That's all. And so that's a good one. There's lots of other great ones. There's some out there that even have some really cool herbs or essential oils in it that can also be really helpful. And then you can even make your own. It's really beneficial to, it's nice to do that, period, just to make your own stuff and kind of know what's in it and have that process. it's really neat. And there's lots of oils that also have a little bit of sun protection in them just on their own. Carrot seed oil has a whole lot of and what's the word? Basically SPF. And so does, let's see, coconut oil has a little in it on its own. A lot of oils have a little in them on their own, but things like carrot seed oil have a lot more, so that it would actually help you if you're one of those more fair types, right? But for some people, coconut oil could potentially be enough if you already have like worked up a good tolerance. If you have more of an olive skin complexion or even deeper tones, then you might not need the protection of something that goes more. So staying hydrated in the summer is really important. And some of the things that we want to watch for and limit are things like alcohol. Pickled and fermented foods can be kind of aggravating for pitta and fire. So that means also sour dairy things like yogurts and kefir and things like that can be. So you just want to, it doesn't mean you can't have these things at all. It just means you want to pay attention that you're not overdoing it with these things. Soy sauce, very salty. Salt in general, not too much. You want to watch it. You can still have salt, but you want to be mindful. Garlic, peppers, hot peppers or hot sauce, obvious reasons. Chocolate, things in the nightshade family like tomatoes and onions. These things are all just create more heat in the body. And so that's really the main reason why, like, we don't want to hold heat in the body at this time of the year. We want to do things that are going to allow the heat to leave our bodies, right? So do things that counter it. And then in the winter, we do, it's the opposite, right? In the winter, we would want to have these kinds of things so that it'd be countering the cold and the dry. So, yeah, I think that is mostly what I wanted to talk about. If you're a person who likes to make a lot of your own things, so you can make some sunscreen, you can make teas with mint and dandelion and rose petals and lavender would be so lovely right now. You can make your own hydrosols, and it's actually not very hard. I have not made a hydrosol myself, but I have heard about how you can do it by yourself, like just using some equipment that you probably have at home. But you can also just buy rose water and rose hydrosol for pretty cheap and use that as a spray throughout the day. And another option is just making a spray with some essential oils, and maybe a little witch hazel is extra cooling. And you can use rose, lavender, there's rosemary is really nice right now. So many different cooling things. Cypress is really nice. Yeah, I would love it if you would share with me some of the tips that you do. Like, what are some of the things that you do to help just counter the heat of the sun? What are some of your summer solutions? Another thing that, just to mention, like, heat, pitta, fire is also can be exacerbated by, like, a lot of times we're overscheduled in the summer, right? We're trying to squeeze every last drop of the summer. We're trying to, like, getting outside and all these things that we can only do for this part of the year. And so sometimes we're just going and doing too much, not just in the sun too much, but also just overscheduled, too many events and things. And so being careful to have that downtime where you just get to sit with your favorite tree, lie down in a hammock, read a book, right? Just the simple things in life. So my advice for that would be to take a look at your summer right now and decide what are the most important pieces for you. What parts really stand out as like, that's what I want to do. That's, that's something, that's an unforgettable experience I can't miss, or whatever. And then letting some of the other ones kind of just go through the cracks, because we can't do everything. And if we try to do everything, then that's going to be exceptionally aggravating for our fire that's already there, and especially in the summer. So I hope that was helpful to you, and I hope that you will comment below and let me know. And I'll post some links below for you for some opportunities to work with me. And obviously, if it's not obvious, please ask any questions that you have. And I love to hear what you have to say, and I love to connect with people, and I love to talk about this stuff. So please use me as a resource and let me know how I can be of service. All right, signing off here. Have a wonderful rest of your week and a wonderful summer, and I look forward to connecting with you soon. Bye. Namaste.